Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bill. This video is a Star Wars recap for the campaign we've been playing on Sundays. Now it's more of a mainly Star Wars, now adding a lot of other sci-fi stuff into it, especially by the end of that game. So let's dive into what all happened and go over all the entertaining events and our mishandling of a situation or two in this game. We also spent a good portion of this game, I think we spent at least an hour or so of this game shopping, so that won't really be mentioned except for when we did it. So where we last left off, we decided that we were going to, or at least I decided I was going to free the slave that I had finally. And we returned him to his wife, which, looking back on it, was a mistake. But we didn't have the information we had until later of what all was going on, and everyone that was paying attention missed all the cues that would tell us otherwise. And we gained our money from returning the slave. And then we went to a planet where we could, essentially we were at a mining colony close to where we needed to be to return the slave. So we went back to a planet that could do dealings for our shopping. And then after our shopping, we went back to that planet, and I wanted to check up on how the slave was doing, what he was up to. That's when we find out that the person we gave him to didn't work there, and then we had to break into the security system, gain some information, rewind some information, try to figure out where they came from, and we pretty much just gathered as much information for pretty much a year to figure out when this person came here and what all was going on. So we found out that they came from the Hutt homeworld, so we assumed they went back there. So we traveled there, and they now had 2 weeks ahead of us. So once we get to the Hutt homeworld, we find a landing spot, and they had landing spots in the atmosphere. So we pick one of those, or like just outside the atmosphere, and we take an elevator down to the planet. We have a nice mishap with the elevator. We put a credit chip in to use the elevator, and then as it starts descending, it starts messing with the credit chip. So our alien messes with it, and it short circuits and drains the credit chip to zero. It's a good thing it was only a 500 credit chip. But we end up on the surface. And then at the surface, we find some guards. There's a big scanning device at the entrance to the, I want to say like town square. The guards were Hutt guards, of course. So we get past them with no issue. And then we try to gather information on the slave. We find him. He's being kept alive and suffering in a painful and slow death in a big like tube in the center of town square, of a town square. I think it was close to where we were. If not, it was like one square over and we had no issue getting there. Well, at this point, we see what all's guarding it. I think about a half a dozen Hutts is what was guarding it, and either another half dozen or dozen attack droids. So we scatter through the crowd and we start planning our rescue. The Mandalorian climbs up onto a building to snipe. At least I think it was the Mandalorian. It was one of his two characters. Either it was his sand person or his Mandalorian. And I want to say it was his Mandalorian. And our Doug character, he makes his way over to the actual storage container. And while we're still trying to figure out what exactly we're going to do, he starts acting instead of talking. So we went from almost ready to do this to full-fledged, let's do this. He starts by creating a distraction. He talks to one of the guards, one of the huts, and he makes his mind control against a hut, which was impressive. And that hut is inspired to overthrow the Dawn, or one of the Dawns. So he talks to a guard. They go and they talk to another guard. And then those two guards kill that hut for betrayal. And then all the huts come around to find out what's going on. So that pulled all the huts away. And at this point, the Doug starts using his lightsaber daggers to sabotage like the power supply to this device that was torturing the slave. And then he finally cuts it free by the time I'm over there. And then I cut all the tubes off the guy in one move. And then the next round, I pick up the platform that the guy was standing on, because that's now cut free. And then I pick up the roof to the platform that was created to create the projection field. And I use move object to move the platform as our standing moving base. And then I use the roof as a shield. But in the meantime, I think the person on the roof, whether it was the Mandalorian or the sand person, throws a grenade and takes out the huts. I want to say that's who he takes out. And then somebody else takes out a group of the attack droids, because now the droids are divided into two groups. I use the shield to protect us from fire. We start gathering people hopping on. My Asgard, who's in battle armor that can now has a flight upgrade, can fly. He's heading straight towards the elevator we need to go up. And on his way, he takes out the turret posts with two giant missiles. And then we make our way there after destroying the last of those attack droids. And after that, we head to the elevator, we head up. We get into our ship without any issue. We hotwired the elevator so we could go up. But we're in our ship with no issue. We take off. Now we have 4 ships following us, 3 fighters, and a cruiser. I think he said it was like the same size ship we had, but I could be wrong. And we only made a small hyperspace jump because we didn't want to jump directly towards our destination, so they couldn't follow us exactly where we were going. So we made a small jump, and as soon as we exited hyperspace, they fired upon us, and I fired one proton torpedo at one of the fighters, and I took it out. But our shields took heavy damage and were almost nothing by the exchange of the first round of fire. Our fighter, the Mando fighter vehicle, turns around and takes out a fighter. I'm not remember exactly how the other 2 fighters went down. I don't remember if I did it or if the Mando did it. But from there, we ended up in a situation where I was like, well, I've already used, I don't know, I think it was like 3 missiles. So I used 1 missile, so I launched the other 9 proton torpedoes at the ship, the big ship. And then from that point, we rolled and only got like 3 or 4 of them to hit the target. So my Force user, who wasn't actively participating in the combat as far as controlling what was going on with guns or missiles. Oh, I know what happened to the other 2 fighters. The Doug took them out because he was in our turret, firing the top and bottom turret at the same time, since he can manipulate both his hands and his feet. But I fired all the proton torpedoes. My Force user manipulates 2 or 3 of them into the ship, which together was enough to destroy that ship. or disable that ship. I don't remember which. Either way, we made sure that ship was destroyed before we left. And then we jumped into hyperspace to head back to that mineral satellite. We put the slave in the Bacta tank we had. We're not sure how to save him, and what little information we're given, he might not be savable. But we'll leave that for, as long as the Bacta tank will keep him alive, we'll leave that for a later date until we have to either decide to let him die or that we can actually help him. And then this has happened retroactively, but this is what happened when we got to the satellite. The reason why it's retroactive is because we would have had, I think, like a week to get to the satellite, so we had time. But in game, we just kind of jumped and jumped and jumped. So I asked the game master today if I could do this, and he said, yeah, sure. So my Asgard put together some data files of us being hired to do this mission by a Hutt that our Wookiee pilot had killed. And we put a few other incriminating informations together with it. Like he's looking to hire soldiers to help take out the other Dons. He's looking to hire assassins and stuff like that. And we're releasing it into our channels of the black market. So that way it'll get to the Hutts and it'll take a little bit of the heat, if not most of the heat off of us. But I don't expect to take all the heat off of us after what we just did. We enter the new hyperspace coordinates. We gather more fuel for hyperspace jumps. Noted by the game master, we forgot to get more food for our travels. So we're getting to a point where we're going to end up in a situation where being hungry will be the normal for until we die of starvation. So this is going to get interesting if that happens. But as we exit that new hyperspace route, we exit it into a debris field. So we're all of a sudden taking a little bit of damage and being shook around by these pieces of ship that litter the area around this planet. And I mean, it looks like an ancient battlefield where all these ships were destroyed in a big battle. Our sensors are detecting some sort of living matter in space. And for whatever reason, we didn't pay it much heed. And then we scan the planet, and we don't detect anything wrong with the planet atmosphere-wise. We're detecting a lot of minerals. We detect a few towns, but nothing's moving in the towns. So we find one or two of I think we found 3 space ports that we could dock at, and we just picked one and went to it. We see bodies of people everywhere. I don't know if he mentioned that they were human or not. I think they were just humanoid and decayed, so old bodies. And we make our way into one of the nearby buildings, which happens to be a library. And we play around with their computer system. And my Asgard manages to figure out how to either translate or at least access the information. And he manipulates that in a few ways and downloads it all. After that, as we're exploring that building more, we find a whole wall missing. On the other side of that missing wall, we see a sort of a living material on the ground that's kind of pulsating. And we see this big mound with spikes out of it that has multiple holes in it. And we see, made out of living matter, and we see a big worm with this huge bulbous section on its back. And we start to see a couple of these snake bug creatures with kind of scythe hands coming at us. Well, I say coming at us, but just there. They don't notice us yet, and we do what we normally do and provoke them. The player that plays the Mandalorian and the Sand Person was like, we should retreat as soon as we saw these things. And we're like, and we do what we normally do is we like to poke things with a stick to see how bad it is. And we begin to do so. His Mandalorian was flying above, giving us air support. So we attack this scythe bug thing, and our initial attack doesn't destroy it, which is what surprises us. So with most of the things we've killed so far, the first attack's usually been enough. So at this point, we counterattack again, but more of these things are coming. So now we're in a worse situation than we thought we would be in. And the Mandalorian's trying to give us air support, and then he's getting shot at by that big bug with the bulbous section on it. And he ends up taking a hit and losing his fighter jet, or space fighter, which was very expensive and very well upgraded. So it is very sad to see that go. But he lands with us. I don't remember if we killed 2 of these bug things or just 1. Either way, we start retreating. We retreat to our main ship and we take off. And we start to see other ships arriving, sort of teleporting in. We weren't given much description on the ships, but also our characters were in a hurry, so neither here nor there on that. But I think the Game Master said that those ships were bombing the surface. And we saw a section of the planet that was like blacked out to our sensors. We see that come up alive with life, and we see all these bug things moving around and everything. We end up leaving the atmosphere and then forgetting that the whole area was surrounded with debris field. Our pilot enters hyperspace, which kicks us out of hyperspace real quick as our shields take pretty much enough damage to almost destroy them outright, and our ship is severely damaged from that. And that's where we left off, because at that point it was midnight and a lot of us had work to do the next day. So we were like, we'll call it here. And that's where it's going to take up. If we play tomorrow, that's where it's going to take up. It's depending upon our Game Master, because he's out of town today and he doesn't know when he'll be back tomorrow. So until we game again, may the Force be with you.